In most cases involving something successful, whether it be a hit movie or a new car model, when something works really well, it's bound to be recreated. And that is exactly what happened in the 1980s between two titans of the American auto industry, whose paths crossed once again. These two men would be automotive genius Lee Iacocca and racing legend Carroll Shelby. And in the 1980s reunion tour, they would build one of the most unique Mopars of the 80s that largely gets overshadowed by its bigger V8 brothers. Today we're taking a deep dive into the forgotten and overlooked Dodge Shelby Chargers and the track-ready GLHS Shelby. Let's first break down Chrysler before we get too far into the Charger to give a little context as to why the Shelby Charger was such a big deal in its creation. The 1980s became a rebirth for Chrysler after it was on the verge of bankruptcy due to poor production quality and massive financial losses across the board. Executives at Chrysler were able to woo Lee Iacocca, who was responsible for helping Ford create the Ford Mustang, Mercury Cougar, Ford Escort, and countless other major ideas that helped shape that company. Iacocca rose to become the president of the Ford Motor Company, but he never saw eye to eye with the famously short-tempered Henry Ford II, and he was fired at seemingly the perfect time for Chrysler. Iacocca helped facilitate and bring in the Dodge K-Car series with the Dodge Aries and Plymouth Reliant, which along with many other compact car models in 1981, bring about new refreshment to the struggling Chrysler empire. The K-Cars weren't anything but sexy, but they did help Dodge get all their companies under the Chrysler umbrella back on their feet. This resurgence of new models also brought the return of a Dodge performance namesake in the Charger, which to this point had taken a 3-year production hiatus since 1978. The 1978 Dodge Charger had been a far cry from its muscle car roots of the 1960s. It was essentially a large V8-powered luxury coupe, lacking in the performance edge that made the original Chargers so iconic. In an attempt to hold on to the prestige of the past, the 78 Charger was more about comfort than muscle, but it used the same name. And by the end of the 1970s, this approach was clearly outdated. The muscle car era as we know it had faded, and the Charger was struggling to stay relevant in a rapidly changing automotive landscape. By 1981, the automotive world was dramatically different. The oil crises of the 1970s had pushed fuel prices skyward, forcing manufacturers to rethink their approach to car design. Gone were the days of massive engines and fuel-hungry land yachts. Instead, smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles were taking over. The Dodge Charger's reintroduction in this era reflected this shift. This new Charger was a stark departure from its predecessors, and it wasn't even a standalone model at first. In 1981, the Charger nameplate reemerged, not just as a full-fledged car though, it was actually a performance package for the Dodge Omni-24, a small, sporty two-door hatchback which shared its DNA with the four-door Dodge Omni hatch. This new downsized EconoBox Charger was built for a new automotive world, where performance now wasn't measured by engine size alone, but how efficiently it could balance power and fuel economy. Initially dubbed the Charger 2.2, this performance package, which debuted in 1982, added $399 to the base price of the Omni 024. For that price, buyers got more than just the badge. The Charger 2.2 came with sporty new graphics, a hood scoop, a rear spoiler, and special gearing designed to boost its performance. The heart of this new Charger was an 84 horsepower, 2.2-liter inline-4 developed by Chrysler, which, while much smaller and much slower than the V8s of prior Chargers, for the period, this 84 horsepower engine had some peppy characteristics to it. But for those seeking even more excitement, Dodge also offered a turbocharged version of the 2.2. The Charger was offered like this initially and saw moderate sales success in its first 2 years. And that meant it was time to capitalize on this. And what better person to help brainstorm a high-performance offering for the new Charger than Carroll Shelby? As a good friend of Iacocca's, Carroll Shelby was called in from his retirement to help craft Chrysler a much sportier image for the brand. Granted, these front-wheel drive four-cylinders were a far cry from the muscle cars of yesteryear that Shelby was used to working on. No matter that, though, Carroll Shelby would still work his magic to help create a contemporary performance car for the Dodge brand. And regarding what would eventually become the Shelby Charger, Carroll Shelby said the following: "I laid out all the parameters that I wanted in the car, and the main parameters were to have as good a handling front-wheel drive car as there is anywhere, that it be unique in appearance, and that it performs adequately. It's not another Cobra, and there's no claim for it to be, but it had to be built so we could add certain things to it. The person who buys it can buy parts and pieces from Chrysler's direct connection to bring its performance up as high as he wants. And as my last parameter was that the base price be held to around $8,000. In short, he wanted a car that could outrun the Volkswagen GTI and could perform with the Porsche 924 while still being very budget-friendly. And in 1983, Carroll Shelby would get his wish. From 1983 to 1987, Shelby modified the Dodge Charger and labeled it to be sold as the Shelby Charger at dealerships. At the front, the Shelby Charger featured a more rigid and defined appearance, starting with a thin horizontal grille flanked by recessed taillights. These sharp lines flowed into a long sloping hood, leading seamlessly into an equally angled windshield, giving the car a sleek and aerodynamic profile. A flat roofline stretched toward the rear, where it met a hatchback design with a distinctive aquarium-like rear window. The rear window crowned a set of square-shaped taillights. What really set the Shelby Charger apart, though, were the performance-inspired design touches. Shelby added racing stripes that ran the length of the car, emphasizing its sporty character. Ground effects kits on the side gave it a lower, more aerodynamic stance, while a redesigned nose added a sense of aggression. These changes, along with the new front-end styling, gave the Shelby Charger a much sportier look compared to the standard Charger model. The Dodge Shelby Chargers were available in 4 different color combinations. That included black with a silver skunk stripe, Santa Fe blue with a silver skunk stripe, silver with a Santa Fe blue skunk stripe, and garnet red with, you guessed it, a silver skunk stripe. All these exterior color combos were fitted to the same 2,456-pound front-wheel drive car with a super short 99.2-inch wheelbase. The Shelby Charger's front end was a pretty standard setup with McPherson struts, while the rear suspension was a semi-independent layout with coil springs and trailing arms. A simple setup, but an effective one. Now, over its 4-year run, the Shelby Charger was powered by a variety of 4-cylinder engines. The heart of the car was the 2.2-liter single overhead cam inline-4 engine with a bore of 3.44 inches and a stroke of 3.63 inches. In its early form, the naturally aspirated engine was carbureted and produced a modest 107 horsepower in the initial Shelby Chargers, thanks to a compression boost compared to the standard 2.2. By 1984, the engine's output was bumped slightly again to 110 horsepower. Then, in 1985, the Shelby Charger received a big upgrade with the introduction of a turbocharged version of the 2.2-liter engine known internally as the T1. This multi-port fuel-injected engine now produced a stronger 146 horsepower because of the addition of a Garrett T3 turbo, which greatly improved the engine's performance and especially its torque. But hold on, because we're not done yet. In its final year, Shelby unveiled their most potent Charger yet, the Shelby Charger GLHS, which stands for Goes Like Hell Some More. And yes, that's actually what it stands for. And this car took things even further. These limited production cars were part of just a 1,000-car production run, where Shelby themselves actually outfitted all the donor cars themselves in-house. These cars were given essentially the same treatment as the limited release of the 1986 Shelby Omni GLHS, which was the more pedestrian hatchback-looking version of the Charger chassis, to put it simply, but powertrain-wise it was almost identical. The 2.2-liter engine in these GLHS cars was heavily modified by the Shelby team, now featuring a forged crank, new pistons, a unique 2-piece intake manifold, and an upgraded turbo now pushing 12 pounds of boost. These changes pushed the power output to an impressive 175 horsepower and 175 foot-pounds of torque. This gave the GLHS a quarter-mile time of 14.87 seconds at 96 miles per hour and a top speed of 135. Impressive numbers for the time that put this little Turbo 4 on par with the IROC Camaros. Helping the Shelby put its power to the ground was an A525 5-speed manual transmission, which was then later replaced by a Getrag A555 5-speed manual. Yes, I know that's a lot of fives. This drivetrain was completed with a rear axle ratio of 356:1, which helped give the Charger a great mix of sportiness and freeway driving ability. The brakes in the front were discs, and they were drums in the rear. The Shelby Chargers, as well as the GLHS cars, were given a tighter steering rack with better brakes, sportier spring rates, better shocks, and better tires to help assist with its cornering capability. In the case of the GLHS, that car was even given better Coney adjustable shocks and struts, plus Goodyear Eagle tires, which helped the GLHS car handle even better than the regular Shelby Chargers. The Shelby Charger and GLHSs featured a classic 80s interior with a square plastic-fitted dash and a primary tachometer. Up front, 2 bucket seats with the Shelby logo on the headrests matched the color scheme, surrounding a 5-speed shifter. The rear had a matching bench seat under the hatchback glass. The simple, lightweight interior helped keep the cars true to their budget sports car roots. And that budget sports car idea seemed to work pretty well. Thanks to Lee Iacocca, Carroll Shelby, and the many teams who worked on it, the Dodge Shelby partnership to build a sporty version of the Charger worked. With an MSRP of around $8,500, Dodge built 24,000 Shelby Chargers alone from 1983 to 1987, with 1,500 Shelby GLHS cars being built in that period, 1,000 Chargers, and 500 Omnis, making them about 10% the total production Charger line in that period. These cars were built to go toe-to-toe with the dehorned V8s of the era, and it was very successful in that. And to show the speed of the GLHS in its peak form, Hot Rod Magazine raced one head-to-head with a 65 GT350, and turns out the new Dodge mopped the floor with it on the racetrack. In the end, the Dodge Shelby Charger would end its production life with a bang in the form of the GLHS. The Charger itself was killed off and would not make a comeback until 2005. Carroll Shelby would stay with Dodge until the early 2000s, helping with various projects before going back to working on his own cars with the Shelby brand and some projects with Ford. Lee Iacocca would retire from Chrysler in 1992, helping cement his role as one of the figures who helped make Chrysler relevant again. The Shelby Charger and the Charger GLHS cars are the perfect examples of less is more, especially in a time when companies simply could not build the high horsepower cars that they wanted to. They worked outside the box and innovated the technology that they had to finally start giving these American economy cars some Euro fighting performance. And that is the story of the Shelby Charger and the Charger GLHS. Thank you all for watching another video. Please make sure to go ahead and